Hello and welcome to day 15 of my 22 push-up challenge. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I wanted to spend a few minutes on one of my favorite topics, and one which is certainly germane to PTSD and was mentioned in a previous video. A key factor in many of the suicides among veterans, and that is the brain. You've probably heard how events like trauma can change the brain, and perhaps accepted this figuratively, as in someone changing their opinion or their mood. However, the truth is that these are literally physical structural changes to the brain, not just figurative speech. To understand this, we need to understand how information flows within the central nervous system in general, and the brain in particular. However, because this is such a huge subject to even touch on briefly, I'll break the discussion up into several days as I continue on with the 22 push-up challenge. I'll quickly gloss over some of the high-level concepts, perhaps digging into them a little deeper each day, until we get to the discussion of the impact of PTSD on the brain, or at least some of what we know about it at this point, in some indeterminate video down the line. The central nervous system is the system in our bodies which transfers information from one place to another via special cells we call neurons. For instance, as an example of our sensory system, when we prick our finger with a pin, receptor cells in the skin of our finger detect the damage to the skin and trigger an electrical spike or action potential, which is transmitted to another nearby neuron, which in turn sends the signal up through fibers in our arm and into the dorsal root ganglion neuron in the spine. And there it in turn sends the signal up through the spinal column up to the brainstem via the trigeminal nerve into a structure called the pons. And I just happen to have a little brain model here. We can kind of demonstrate this. There's your trigeminal nerve. On the bottom side, coming into this bulgy part here, is the pons. This is all part of the brainstem. From the pons, the signal is sent up to various other places of the brains, in particular the thalamus, which resides in this area. And then from the thalamus up into the sensory cortex, where there are large groups of neurons organized into structures topographically. That is, there is a mapping of receptor cells in the skin to specific areas in the sensory cortex. In a similar fashion, our motor system controls our movements. In this case, volition is triggered in the via activity in the frontal lobe. These signals are sent to the premotor cortex, which encode our intent to move. These intents to move get encoded into the motor cortex. From the motor cortex, which are specific muscle group movements and sequences of muscle group movements, these signals get sent down through the brainstem, passing through the thalamus. They get modulated by this area of the brain called the cerebellum, which manages and finally tunes those movements into fine motor skills. And out through as before, out through the dorsal root ganglia neurons, and then finally into the neurons that innervate the muscle fibers, which contract when they receive the signals. That's about all we have time for today, so perhaps tomorrow we can discuss how change, called plasticity, occurs in the brain, all in preparation for discussion of the changes related to PTSD. Thanks for listening, and my 22 push-ups recorded earlier follows.